This is Special Chronicles, giving respect and a voice to people with special needs.
I shudder thinking how the world can be so cruel. Lend my voice to those who can't. It's time we tried, it's time we cared, it's time we stand. It starts with a voice.
Welcome to the finale episode of Road to the Special Olympics 2026 USA Games, a Special Chronicles podcast series. I'm Daniel Smrokowski, host and founder of Special Chronicles, an athlete leader and health messenger from Special Olympics Illinois, and a former Thousand Tribal Global Messenger. Today, we close this journey with a conversation about legacy, the meaning, the impact, and the future that's shaped by the 2026 Special Olympics USA Games. Over the past 2 months, we've traveled from the cornhole courts to the cheer mats, from healthy athlete screenings to unified sports arenas, witnessing inclusion in action across Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota. For this finale episode, The Legacy, I'm honored to be joined by Jessica Poole, Director of Communications for the 2026 Special Olympics USA Games. Jessica has been at the heart of the storytelling, the strategy, and the vision behind these USA Games. And today we reflect on what will stay with us long after the closing ceremony that happened a month ago. We'll explore the moments that defined the Games, the athlete leadership, like myself, that shaped its culture, the breakthroughs behind the scenes, and the commitments that will carry this movement, the Special Olympics movement, forward. And we'll look ahead to the next generation, the evolution of inclusion, and the future of Special Olympics in the United States. This is the story of legacy. This is the story of impact. And this is what comes next. Please put your virtual hands together as we welcome Jessica on this Special Chronicles podcast series. Welcome, Jessica, as I topple my mic over.
You're just so excited. Thanks for having me, Daniel.
I am. Yeah, I know. I'm still excited a month later and editing all the content that we both recorded before the games and during the games. It's so exciting just to listen back, and we still have more content that will be hopefully by this weekend. The rest of our content will be uploaded, and just so many powerful, some exclusive stories that people will not hear on any other podcast series from the games. And so, yeah, so exciting. And so then thank you again for taking the time to come on the program.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And we got to, just to let our listeners in, we got a chance to, I know everybody was running around during that week, but we got a chance, I think, to meet a couple times during the games.
Yes, we did. And it's lovely to meet you and your mom and just talk about all of the amazing stories that were coming from the games.
Absolutely. So let's before we get into the main topic, can you tell us about yourself, your role at these 2026 Special Olympics USA Games, and what brought you to the Special Olympics movement?
Yeah, so I am local to Minneapolis, St. Paul. I've lived here since April of 2023. And my dear friend, Molly Gallatin, is our VP of Communications. And we similar backgrounds, women in sports. My entire career has been built on the communication side in sports. I spent about 20 years in college athletics, telling the stories of college athletic departments and coaches and players and teams, and then worked with a pre-professional women's soccer team, a professional women's rugby team. And so when Molly kind of brought this idea to me, I was super excited because sports is my passion. I have a 5.5-year-old son, and he is playing sports. And so it was a great opportunity to work with sports, but in a different way, with different responsibilities. I think that sports in some capacity is responsibility. And so it was just great to really be a part of this really special, large scale event that brought so many fabulous people and sponsors to my backyard. So that's kind of how I got involved with the Special Olympics USA Games.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that. I want to comment on just a couple quick things of your story. My aunt and uncle also live in the Twin Cities as well, so we got to stay with them, and something that I loved about what you shared that's a part of your story is highlighting women in sports, because just like our founder of Special Olympics, Eunice Kennedy Shriver, was a woman leader in sports. The CEO of the USA Games, Christy, was, and so it's neat that just like the power of unified sports and inclusion, but the fact that not just inclusion of people of all abilities competing, but also that the fact that those women leadership leading these national games was really exciting. So just on behalf of my fellow Special Olympics athletes from across the country, the amount of communication and storytelling that you and your team did it's really grateful for all the hard work that you and your team have done.
Yeah, well, we thank you for that, but really it's the athletes and the stories from the experiences that made this such a success. We set up the opportunities, you guys ran with them, and so that was really the beauty of this experience, is that was able to get athletes that maybe didn't have the same type of media outreach back home or whatever that looked like. We were able to give them some really cool opportunities, memories that will last for a lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple of those, a friend of mine from Illinois, I think was part of an ad or something with United Healthcare, and I think she was featured on an ad. Katie, I don't know if you know Katie O'Neill, who competed in gymnastics.
Yeah.
And then there was a Special Olympics North America just shared a story that there was an athlete, and I'm blanking on what state she's from, but I think a power lifter, and she's also I think the story that they shared was going beyond the gold medals that she got, but she's she's writing a fantasy novel, I think. And so that, and then Wyatt, you probably know Wyatt, Southern Shriver, Global Messenger, who was on ESPN.
Yeah, ESPN.
Yeah, and so he's in the class that was after my class of Southern Shriver, Global Messenger, and so I got a chance to talk with him when we were in Minnesota, and so it's neat to kind of hear. Because he also has a podcast, and so it's neat to kind of hear about his athlete leadership skills on this national media that not the media. So it's really exciting that the amount of both on the field and off the field, the athlete leadership opportunities at these USA games like that, to begin talking about legacy, like just that alone, I think speaks very powerful on the legacy that you and your team have done. Looking back, what do you think of when you think about these 2026 Special Olympics USA Games that now took place a month ago? As a whole, what moment or theme, and the obvious theme of calling all champions, but when you think of it as a whole, what moment or theme best captures its meaning to you?
So I'll share a really brief story. So, like I said, I have a 5-year-old, a 5.5-year-old, and he, this is actually before the games. We did the polar plunge, and he was incredibly excited to A, see his mom jump into a freezing cold lake, and then B, he got to see and spend some time with some of our Minnesota Special Olympic athletes that were going to be participating in the games. And he's 5.5 years old. We go to tons of sporting events. He has grown up around sports, and he looked at them in the same way that he looks at Anthony Edwards of the Timberwolves, Courtney Williams of the Minnesota Lynx, Byron Buxton of the Twins. Like they're just all athletes. And so for me, the most special moment was being able to share and have the conversations with him that the U.S. athletes at the USA Games train just as hard as everybody else. And they have such unique abilities and are capable to do so many things. And it was very cool to see him really have this moment where he's like, oh yeah, he went and watched some basketball games and he was like, this guy's maybe even better than Anthony Edwards. And I was like, yeah. So I think that for me, it was seeing the USA Games through my son's eyes and his vision that everyone's the same and inclusion is just what it's about. There was no differences in his mind. And I thought that for me, that's always something that I will take away from these games is that if a 5.5-year-old can see these athletes in this way, so can everybody else.
Awesome. I love that. And that reminds me something that our chairman, Tim Shriver, had talked about, that I think Loretta Claiborne, Chief Inspiration Officer, who you've probably have met, there was some exhibit in Washington, D.C. that I think there was some young kids that had a similar experience that your son had and saw this exhibit of Special Olympics athletes and I'm blanking on the museum in Washington, D.C. Maybe somebody can put a comment.
Help us out.
Yeah, help us out. Put a comment on YouTube. And that similar story of inclusion and these young kids of seeing how we're just like professional athletes. And then the other quick comment that I wanted to say, that when you and your son did the polo plunge, I've also done the polo plunge a bunch. I've done the super plunge where you plunge once in a while for 24 hours. The governor of Minnesota, I know he's done the polo plunge. I don't know if it was at the same time that you did it.
Not this year, yeah.
But not this year, but yeah. But so I had a chance to meet him before the opening ceremony when he and his, I think, daughter and family, when there was a few of us, me and then two athlete leaders from Cleveland. We were meeting a lot of the VIPs, and so it was neat to be able to thank the governor of Minnesota for all the support there, because it was amazing, both him and his wife, like the amount of support that he gave for these USA Games. I don't know if you want to highlight the support of Governor Tim Walz and
Governor Walz and his family are phenomenal. I mean, they have been in lockstep with us every step through this. And so we're really appreciative of them, not just saying they're supporting, but being there and being immersed in what we're building and showing up. And, I think that's really important, is a lot of us can say, yeah, we support you, but like they were in it with us. And I think that that just says a lot about his leadership. And we're really appreciative.
Awesome. Yeah, I believe I've been to a couple other USA Games. Hopefully someday I'll get to compete. But I don't believe that there's a lot of. I believe he might be one of the first governors who has been this involved in the USA Games. So as we now talk more about defining, we've already been defining legacy, but what do you believe will be the lasting legacy of these Special Olympics USA Games for athletes, for families, and communities?
Yeah, so I've thought a lot about this, and I think for me, it goes into a couple buckets. Like, I think about our sponsors, and for many of them, this is their first time sponsoring an event of this magnitude with Special Olympics. And so I think that we have opened up some just innovative ways that sponsors can contribute to this movement that maybe haven't been thought of before. And I think that, truthfully, in order for us to make the inclusion revolution as global as we want it to be, we have to have sponsors. We have to have dollars behind it. And so I think that this was a good way for many sponsors to see how they can really be a part of that. And so I think that'll be a piece of lasting legacy. I also think particularly for our volunteers, many of them, this is their first time volunteering with Special Olympics, and the amount of people that stop me in the grocery store when I'm doing something with my son and they see me wearing something that say, I volunteered and I had such an amazing experience, and I'm so super excited to get plugged into what, Special Olympics Minnesota is doing. So thank you for the opportunity. So I think that we open some eyes and some hearts to, really, again, helping the inclusion revolution movement move forward in the state of Minnesota. And then I think about, just for me personally, it really comes down to making sure that I am not walking the walk, right? I think that this, being the director of communications for this type of event, really has made me think about, okay, what type of language are we using? How are we being inclusive visually? How are we, making sure that in my day-to-day life, that it's not just a checkbox, but it's actually something that's ingrained into it. I want to get to the point where it would be weird if it wasn't a part of how I just normally talk, think, speak, act. And so I think that I understand really keenly what it's like to be different. I'm a Black woman that works in sports, and so there's not that many of us. So yeah. I do have I bring a different feel to it. And so I think those are the three things that stick out immediately to me. And I also really think, I think that the unified movement within Special Olympics is something really special. Again, I take it back to my son. I am on this fact-finding mission to figure out how I can get my son's school to be a unified school, and how can we make this happen at the elementary school age? Because I think that the thing that we need to really think about is, if we start younger, we create a culture of young people who know nothing different, who this is just a part of how they do sport. And so I think that's really important. And I think that for me, the unified movement is something that's really powerful, something that I will be a champion of forever and always, because I do think that it changes two people's lives instead of one. Two families' lives instead of one. And I think that that's really important. We can't claim to be forward-thinking and inclusive if we're not actually doing things and helping those that are having those life experiences. It changes you in a different way. And so that's something that those are the four things that I think are really important to carry forward.
Awesome. I love that. And building upon what you said about the being a champion of the unified movement, that's something that is so happy to hear you talk about that, because I think so many people when the every 4 years when the USA Games come around, or even the local at the local program level, whether it's in Minnesota, where you're from, whether it's in Illinois, where I'm based, or any across the 50 states, I think 52 local programs, is most people think that it's just for those of us with intellectual disabilities. But now, highlighting Unified is people can see that it's for people of all abilities. It's for people with and without intellectual disabilities. And then you talk about the volunteers and people stopping you at the store. A quick story. My aunt and uncle do, since they're both retired, they do professional dance competitions and dance classes.
Cool.
And so they came to the opening ceremony. They were singing in the stands, but my mom and I obviously won't. But they I think they told us, I think the next day, because it took us an hour to get out of the parking garage after opening ceremony, just because of how busy
all
it was.
Busy.
Yeah, all the people. But my, in fact, one of the I think it's the episode that I edited from the ESPN Unified Sports Challenge. I think it's that up.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's maybe it's one of the upcoming episodes that I'm going to be releasing, and I forgot which one it is, but I edited a little behind the scenes of walking in the parking garage. And I forgot which episode I edited that clip into, but my aunt and uncle had shared that they were at their dance competition during the games, and they said that a friend of theirs was also at the opening ceremony and get to the games, and they didn't expect so that was really cool to see that another local attendee. And then my aunt told me that I actually didn't realize, but she volunteered when the international when the World Games the international
91.
Yeah, in 91, and so that's something that I didn't realize that she had past volunteer experience. So that was exciting to hear. So yeah, and then I a friend of mine and my girlfriend. She has volunteered at previous USA Games and World Games, and she was volunteering, I think, at basketball. And I was trying to meet up with her, but because of my busy, as you were busy, because of my busy schedule, I couldn't meet up with her. But yeah, so it's really exciting to hear from volunteers, whether they're like my aunt and uncle's age, or I interviewed a couple young volunteers at volleyball I don't know. I think they might probably high school age, and so it's neat that there was. Did you see that there was a wide range of volunteers, young and old?
Yes, we had a wide range of volunteers. We had a lot of people sign up to volunteer for one day and then ask if they could come back the next day. So again, the volunteer experience was it was vital to the operation of the games in general. But I think that what we discovered is, again, once you're around these athletes, it's really hard to not be around them. So I think people just want to come back and experience the joy that the games brought to people. Yeah,
I know. And that's like both for myself and some of my other friends, a couple of my other friends who are also athlete leaders were on the athlete advisory council, and some of us, not only when we're competing like at the local level, but we find ways to still be involved and still lead at the national level as well. So that's really exciting. as we switch now into leadership perspective, how has leading these Special Olympics USA Games as the director of communications, how has that changed your own understanding of inclusion and of athlete leadership? Will athletes leading, whether it's on the Athlete Advisory Council, whether it's athletes like myself leading in the podcasting media, athlete media teams, how has your leadership perspective changed and your understanding of inclusion and athlete leadership?
Yeah, so I'll speak to inclusion first. I think that I have always been really aware and conscious of the need to be inclusive from my own personal lens. And so I think for me, this was a very great experience to think about inclusion in such broader terms. I'm so used to advocating for like, there's no women at the table. There's no people of color at the table. Like I am dialed in on that. But as I went through this experience, I was very much, my horizons were broadened by the concept of disability, and just that you can't tell that everybody has a disability. So how do we make sure that our cultures our workplace cultures are in such a space where we are thinking about all of these things, whether it's socioeconomic, disability, like these things are vital to expanding the bottom lines of business. And if we're very blunt about it, diversity of thought, experience, ability is what drives innovation in business. And so I think it's very important and very vital that we continue to have these larger conversations about what that looks like. And so I was like, the Inclusive Work Summit, I think is, our CEO, Christy, says this all the time. That is our legacy to the Twin Cities, is just to broaden the horizons of all of the wonderful businesses that are here, Fortune 500, 250, whatever that looks like. How do we create space where we're actually having conversations about inclusive hiring practice, inclusive workplace culture? Like, let's have those conversations. And I think that the Inclusive Work Summit was a phenomenal opportunity. And the people that I know that went to it got so much from it, and are starting to have different types of conversations in the workplace. And I think truly that is how we continue the inclusion revolution in the business realm. I think that athlete leadership, I think I'm a little bit biased because I come from a background where that is what I was doing for 20 years in college athletics and in pre-professional and professional athletics. My passion for athletes is to have them use their athletic abilities to fuel the passions that they have for life, whether that's leadership opportunities, whether that's entrepreneurship opportunities. Let your love of athletics be your platform for the things that you want to do in the rest of your life. And I think that the coolest thing for me, this games, was just seeing so many athletes doing journalistic work, having conversation. Like, I will never forget, I was sitting in the media room, and I believe the athlete reporters group was basically interviewing Maria Shriver, and the questions that the conversation that they were having with her was so beautiful, because it was a conversation and she was asking them questions and they were asking her questions. And she said something that really still resonates with me. She said, well, we're all journalists here. And I was just like, that's it. We're all journalists here, and we're all trying to get the story. We're all trying to get our questions answered. And it was just a beautiful thing. And so I think that for me, the amount of athlete leadership opportunities that the 2026 USA Games provided, I think sets the bar really high for everybody coming after us, because I do think that we as a local organizing committee really were dialed in that we wanted to make these games an experience for the athletes that they were going to remember for a lifetime. And that was from just how we thought about venues, how we thought about meals, how we thought about opportunities and experiences for them to have. They were at the core of everything that we did. And we really leaned on that Athlete Advisory Council to give us their perspective on what they wanted to see and what worked and what they, all of that. And so I think that we really heard them, and we did a lot of listening, a lot of going back to them with ideas after listening to them. And so I'm really proud of our group for keeping athletes at the center of this. And by keeping athletes at the center of this, we were able to center the athletes in all of our sponsorship conversations and our conversations about just ancillary events surrounding the games. And so I think that we did a wonderful job in making sure that we were asking the right questions to the Athlete Advisory Council and also listening to them, and then taking that feedback and making it really integral to how we showed up at the games.
Yeah, absolutely. I in episode 2 of this series, I talked with David and Sean, the co-chairs of the Athlete Advisory Council, and hearing from them the amount of thought that the leadership that you and the others have done to put all athlete perspective at the front too. I think there was a line that I think David might have said this. David might have said this, that they wanted to treat this just like in an Olympic type event, like you wouldn't think of it, that you wouldn't think it's like this cheesy kid type where sometimes people think of us as kids, and I think people got that feeling at the games. What you said about what the powerful about you can't tell that we all have a disability. For myself, for my friend Katie, who competed in gymnastics, for some others, you can't tell that we have an intellectual disability, and that's what I think is so powerful about this movement, about these USA Games and just Special Olympics. This inclusion revolution movement, and overall is it really gives us a chance, like you said, to build upon all sports, whether like for myself, like whether I'm competing in bocce or basketball, and build that upon into our leadership skills off the field is so powerful. The comment that you said about the athlete reporters interviewing Louis Shivel, I got a chance to co-MC the ribbon cutting of Healthy Athletes. I don't know if you will there.
I wasn't there. I was handing out credentials that morning.
But I actually introduced Maria as my friend, and she even said, that she could use help with the podcast, and she said that she also came to the games to meet friends, and so it was exciting to hear. And I think if you go back, it's I think it's episode 5 of this series. So whether it's you or listeners, if you scan the QR code right above us on the screen, you can listen to it. I think episode 5, it's titled Healthy Athletes. And in talking with the AV people in the room, I recorded the entire opening ceremony, and you can hear the entire ribbon cutting on this podcast series. Probably an exclusive. You probably can't hear that on any other podcast. So just one of the exclusive stories that we were able to, yes, ESPN and other media covered Healthy Athletes, which is so powerful, the world's largest health organization for people with ID. But the fact that we were able to bring people that ribbon cutting, not live, but on demand, was really powerful. So it's neat that you were able to witness that the athlete, like Maria being, I think, a journalist on NBC, and the fact that she connected with Special Olympics athlete reporters in just like she would do with Al Walker or Robin Roberts. So I'm trying to list some of the big NBC because she's on that network. But I think that story that you shared really highlights another part of the legacy that I think in Cleveland in 2030 and others, they're going to have a high bar to. I was talking with an athlete, with a couple. I'm blanking on his name, but I was standing with them when we were meeting the VIPs, and I'm blanking on. He was on the athlete leadership adult experience, but we were talking about the next USA Games, and so I was trying to because they came to kind of see how you guys are doing it, and then how to build the next USA Games.
Yeah.
Building upon what you said about the athlete impact and athlete leadership, how did the athlete leaders that you interacted with, whether it's on the athlete advisory council, whether it's the athlete reporters that you mentioned, whether it's you don't have to say interacting with myself, but how did the athlete leaders influence the direction, the tone, and the culture of these 2026 USA Games?
I think they were everything. I think that honestly, for us, it was about creating an experience for them and for them to be successful. And so I think that we would not have had as much success, as much access, as much anything without their input and their leadership and their thought partnership, really. I think, like I said, I think the most beautiful thing that I saw was just the tons of stories that the athlete reporters covered over the week. Seeing RJ, I hope I'm getting this name.
Yes,
RJ,
yeah.
he was leading that group. My goodness, he was such a great leader for them, and he really set them on the road to success. And so I think it's just, I think, again, this is an opportunity for them to take ownership of the things that they're already passionate about. And I think a lot of times we think about people with intellectual disabilities not being able to, that we talk about people with intellectual disabilities about the things that they can't do. And I think that this week we were able to see all of the beautiful things that athletes with ID can do. And I thought that it was such for me, some of the questions that they were asking Maria Shriver, I was like, okay, they're really getting into it. Like, and I think that we have to reframe the narrative of, instead of being what can't they do, it's what can they do, and those things that they can't do, how can we get them to a place where they feel more confident, or that we get them closer to what they're trying to do. And I for me, that's what I'll take away, is that the whole week was being able to watch athletes do the things that they're more than capable of doing without barriers, without limits, without, it was just a really beautiful thing. And I think that had we not had such intentional conversations and feedback from the athlete leaders, that I don't think that we would have had as much success. And so I think that really the local organizing committee dialing in very early that this was going to be a very important part of how we were going to structure the games and what we wanted to be the takeaway from the games. I think that it had been something that we thought about as an afterthought, it would have looked completely different. But this was something that was ingrained in every member of the LOC from day one. And so I think that for us, seeing it come through the way that it did in such beautiful moments and beautiful storytelling and just wonderful experience for the athlete leaders is a testament to the intentionality from Christy all the way down that this was going to be how we were going to operate.
Awesome. And that speaks exactly the fact that you had athlete leaders involvement since day one. I think that speaks a lot to what the CEO David Evangelista, what Chairman Tim Shriver has always talked about, of being an athlete-led movement, that it's not just led by Christy, it's not just led by yourself, but the fact that it's now a movement that has shifted from being an athlete for us with ID, but an athlete led, and so that's really powerful that you said. And when you mentioned RJ, he a few years ago he was a guest on this podcast, and a 1 hour conversation turned into a 2 hour conversation, and then he since the Elk of Illinois, which I think there's a chapter in the disability. There's chapters across the country, but they had I didn't expect, but somebody had nominated, and they gave me a Self Advocacy Award in 2020, and so he, as a way to kind of announce that on this podcast, he turned the microphone around on me and interviewed me about my story, because you can't wait. It's hard to interview yourself.
Oh yes,
maybe now with AI, but we don't use AI voices on this podcast. And so RJ, the amount of I've worked with him during my time as a Southern Survival Club Messenger, where he edited blogs that we wrote for Special Olympics, and the amount of hopefully RJ will listen to this, because his the fact that he's also a Special Olympics athlete, and his detail, his thought, his caring. He had texted me when we were in Minnesota and asked me to feature a couple of the athlete media team, and so we met up in the media room, and so I interviewed two of them, and then I've edited an episode featuring two of the Sona athlete media team, Wyatt, because he was an athlete on ESPN, and then Louie Goodfellow. I don't know if you know Louie.
Oh, yes.
Louie from Illinois, because my own program, and she has a YouTube channel, and so kind of three different, both the YouTube, the TV, and then the digital work that the athlete reporters. So I was trying to kind of feature three different, and myself being an athlete media as well, but I didn't really have anybody interview myself. But the fact that to kind of highlight, like RJ had recommended, RJ had pitched to highlight athlete media, and I thought, well, we should, just like the healthy athletes, some of these stories I didn't plan to feature on this series, but I think part of it, and you probably found this too, just being at the games, hearing these stories, it's a natural reason why we need to feature some of these stories.
Yes.
You mentioned the power of inclusion, the power of unified sports, the growth that we saw, like unified cornhole and other unified sports. And what did these Special Olympics USA Games in Minnesota, what did these games reveal about the future of unified sports nationwide?
I think they revealed that unified is the future of Special Olympics. And I think that that's something that we should be really proud of. I think that the stories and the relationships built with unified pairs is really what the inclusion revolution is about. And so I think that I would anticipate Minnesota has a really high number of schools that participate that are unified schools, but I would expect to see unified schools, more middle schools, more elementary schools. I think that I think I said this earlier, I think that if we can really showcase the concept of, I'll use our forever changed in a unified pair, you're not just changing the life of a Special Olympic athlete, you're also changing the life and perspective of the able-bodied, the person that is helping, right? And so that's the most important piece, because if we change the perspective of everybody else, then we create better lives and outcomes for those with ID. And that's the goal, right? The goal is to talk about the ability, not the disability. And I think that the unified movement is one in which you really get to the heart of that very quickly. And so I would expect to see the unified movement really take off. I would expect to see it in, not just high school and middle school levels. I think we need to be looking at how can we expand this to elementary schools. Your gym classes are the best places to work with unified pairs, right? And then I think it also is a great opportunity for, maybe you're not the best athlete, but you're friends with someone that has ID, then you get to be their biggest cheerleader if you're in a unified pair. And that's really important too. So I really look to see the unified movement to really take off. And I'm excited to be a part of it and support it however I can. So yeah.
Awesome. We're going to combine a few bullets just for the sake of time. But as we now, we talked about sports and athlete leadership, but the legacy of healthy athletes, we briefly mentioned it a little bit earlier, as if our listeners go back to the middle of this series, which the series started as a 10-part series. It's now stretched into a 12-part series, just because of the amount of stories that came out of Minnesota. The healthy athletes, as I previously stated, co-emceed the ribbon cutting of healthy athletes. I shared the story of going through healthy athletes and finding out having some mild hearing loss when I competed a year ago. Got fitted for a hearing aid 5 days before coming to Minnesota. The Stuckey hearing folks had heard my story, and then they had me come back in the middle of the week, and the Stuckey folks had their camera crew. They put a microphone on me, and they ended up fitting me for and our viewers can't see this, but because of my headphones, but and actually, honestly, if my headphones are not on, it'd probably be hard to tell. But I was fitted for at the USA Games in Minnesota. I was fitted for hearing aids in both years, and I've noticed a huge difference. And so that just right there, myself sharing the story, but hearing the Stuckey, I'm blanking on her name, Tanny, I think, from Stuckey. She had shared a story of that there was an athlete who competed, and I guess they fitted most people who needed hearing aids at healthy athletes, but there was a story that she shared that somebody couldn't, and I think her husband started Stuckey, the hearing aid company, and there was an athlete that they couldn't fit because of the shape of her ear. So because Stuckey is based in Minnesota, they had her come up to the headquarters of Stuckey and fitted her for an hearing aid there. So with your experience, how will the healthy athlete screenings, and if you have any numbers of athletes like myself who were screened, you can share that. Otherwise, how will healthy athlete screenings and education continue to shape the health equality beyond Minneapolis, St. Paul, beyond these 2026 USA Games?
Yeah, so I think that healthy athletes is probably one of the most powerful things that we did. I think that it is. I didn't know this when I started working with the USA Games, but those with intellectual disabilities are very oftentimes don't get the best healthcare, right? And we could go on it. We could wax poetic about healthcare for days, but I do think that healthy athletes, at least for me, gave me insight into the fact that we had so many volunteers working at healthy athletes. I'll share a quick story. A friend of mine was a mental health professional, and she had seen some of the volunteer things that I was posting on my own personal LinkedIn, and she volunteered and was at healthy athletes. And to be honest, I did not even know that she was volunteering until after the games were over. And she sent me a note and she said, "Thank you. Thank you for posting about this, because I now realize that as a part of my practice, I need to make space for those with ID in my practice." And I was like, "Yeah, you do." And I think that healthy athletes truly should be one of the largest legacies that these games leaves, is that, healthcare is vitally important for everyone. Healthcare is vitally and critically important for those with ID. If you can't express yourself to your healthcare practitioner to get the things that you need, you're in a world of trouble. And so I think I see healthy athletes being a huge legacy. I've talked to so many folks that volunteered at healthy athletes that are like, okay, how can we make this a part of just like a normal program? Like, what does Minnesota's program need to do to get this consistently? Like, how can we make sure that the athletes are taken care of, just their basic health needs? Because truthfully, if you think about it, you age out of your parents' insurance at a certain age. Your Medicaid only covers this much. Like, there's just a lot of nuance that you don't think about, but it is a vital part of the existence of someone that has ID. And so I think that that's the next thing that I would love to see tackled more broadly. I think we talk a lot about healthcare, but like healthcare for this specific demographic is not, it's not something to be messed around with. And it truly extends their life in ways that are profound, right? And it's quality of life for them, right? Like your hearing aids, you're going through life hearing at a certain level when you could be hearing so much better. And just a small thing like hearing aids makes their quality of life better. And that's what we're aiming for, right? We want to showcase the ability. And if we can do that through healthcare and those type of things, like, my goodness, we should be doing it far, far and wide. And so I think that healthy athletes will always be something that can continue to grow. I think the Healthy Athletes program can continue to grow. And I think that, advocating for, I think that anyone that volunteered now has a personal experience so that it can advocate in their own day-to-day practices for those with intellectual disabilities. So yeah, I think that it's vitally important, and it's something that we need to continue to put dollars behind, and to have sponsors show up in big ways to continue to push that forward.
Absolutely, yeah. Just like how United Healthcare not only was a presenting sponsor, but sponsoring one of the disciplines. And I loved everything that you shared about the power of healthy athletes. And I know, like in Illinois, I don't know how many disciplines in Minnesota, but I know in Illinois, at all state summer games, we only offer, I believe, only a few of them. Not all 7, 8, 9, not all disciplines like what was at the USA Games. So that's something that I think that you share, that whether it's in Minnesota, Illinois, or across all 50 states, that we can try to, even at the local level, try to
absolutely
reach, all the disciplines at every state games. And then you shared about your friend, about you posting on your LinkedIn, and that's something that I think that if more people can follow your example, and whether it's on their LinkedIn, whether it's on their Instagram, or their Facebook, or their X, or their Snapchat, or their TikTok, if they just share a little post about volunteering, or being at the USA Games, or being, at the next games, or even at the local state games as well. If that one little post can make a big difference to reach just one more volunteer, because I think there's probably more volunteers than the 3,000 athletes that competed, but that powerful impact that you shared on your LinkedIn, that I've shared on social media, that many other, I'm sure there's a lot of other staff at Special Olympics, international and local programs were sharing. There was a quote that when we were at the ESPN Unified Sports Challenge, in addition to interviewing some of the celebrities, but I also talked to some other people, including I saw one of the board members took a picture, and it wasn't until after I got back from the games that one of my coworkers at United Airlines was there. And I zoomed in on this picture, and I didn't. He was in the same room that I was in, but we didn't see each other there. But this powerful quote, and I didn't have time to pull it up for this podcast. But if our listeners go to our Special Chronicles on Instagram, specialchronicles.com, and then you can click on Instagram, and then go back on the page. The wife of the CEO of my local program in Illinois, because our CEO, he came from outside of Special Olympics, but his wife came to the USA Games, and she shared a powerful quote about of witnessing the athletic ability, and I'm blanking on the exact quote, and we don't have time for me to go find it now, but go and find it. And that quote, I think my local program in Illinois had we shared it, and it was I don't know if you saw that clip, but it was really, really powerful that people are recognizing just it's not only the athletic ability that at these USA Games, but what us athletes, what us Special Olympics athletes are showing the country is not getting into like, just like Special Olympics on this program at Special Chronicles, we don't take political sides, but I think what us athletes are already showing is really showing how to lead, both on the sports field, but even more that in life and as a country overall. Talking about this national movement and the whole city of Minnesota, how do you see Minneapolis, St. Paul continuing the momentum of inclusion after the games? And then as we dive into these national conversations and commitments, you talked about the Inclusive Work Summit. Just like this series, another series that I've been doing for the past number of years is a Unified at Work series on this podcast, which focuses on inclusive conversations. I had a number of leaders at United Airlines on, the Disability Business Resource Group at United Airlines. Actually, even though I'm an employee, they sponsor this Unified at Work series that I've been producing. A little delayed in getting that sponsorship this year, but we won't go into the details on air about that. But so as we dive into this community engagement, how do you see Minneapolis, St. Paul continuing the momentum of inclusion after these games? What national conversations or commitments have emerged because of these 2026 USA Games? And then finally, as we talk about the corporate partnership legacy, how will sponsors, partners, and donors continue supporting athletes and programs after the closing ceremonies, now that it's been a month after the games?
Yeah.
I know it's three big bullets, but
it's okay. I think that really the legacy of these games that Minneapolis St. Paul will carry forward is more intentional conversations around what it looks like to be inclusive at work in the workplace. And I really think that was something that our CEO, Christy, really from the beginning was like, we're going to do this summit and this is going to be something that we leave behind for our local community. And I think that she's done that. I think that different conversations are happening. And so I think that we're well on our way there. I think that I think the unified movement, I think is really, I think that we will see that as a national next step. I think that is, if I'm not a betting person, I'm not a predictor, but I do think that if I had to put money on it, I would think that you're going to see the unified movement really take off. I think the ESPN Unified Challenge highlighted some of those beautiful things, but then also just the amount of unified sports that we had at the games, and the ability to see that and what it looks like in real life, as the kids say, I think was really beautiful. And I think from a corporate standpoint, I think that it really gave another avenue for where sponsorship dollars can go and how sponsors can think about, sports sponsorships are something everybody wants to do. There's only so many sports teams in your local town or whatever that looks like. But I do think that corporate sponsors have been given another innovative way to use their corporate dollars responsibly and for the greater good. And I think that we might start to see these type of sponsorships from larger scale companies, not just, obviously the UHCs and the Jersey Mikes are very dialed into this, but, some of, I'll say Unreal, which was our corporate partner that I'm actually wearing an Unreal shirt right now. They are a local apparel business here in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and they just showed up and showed out. And I think that it just gave them a really unique and distinct way to be a part of the Special Olympics movement. And so I think that I see the USA Games and the sponsors that we were able to bring in, thanks to our development team, thinking about how to sponsor Special Olympics and inclusivity in sport in a much different way. And I think that's all we can hope to do, right? Is to get someone to look at it differently and to think about it differently. And I think that for many of our sponsors, we've done that. And so I'm awesome. Grateful for that.
Awesome. I love that. And what you talked about getting these sponsors, getting these partners to look at things differently, that ties into something that you said at the top of the program about looking at those of us with intellectual disabilities as different, of recognizing that difference. And I think that common theme of what you talked about at the beginning of the program and just now in our later is a perfect connection. Hopefully our listeners can caught on to that. And you said about that apparel partner, that was so awesome. I was I went at the fan zone at not the one up in I was up in Blaine, but meeting with Bank of America, because double athlete leadership, media, double duties. Sure. But the one at Huntington Bank, that fan zone, I was trying to find a USA Games show or something, and I didn't really see one that I was looking for, like that black one with like the logo, and I didn't, and so I don't know if there's anything available online, but maybe we could talk off air, but because I wasn't able to get one when I was there, but yeah, we could talk off air. But the one last comment I wanted to say is I loved what you highlight about unified sports taking off, because I think we've seen a lot of unified sports over the past, like ever since it started. But what I wanted to highlight about what you said is one of my I only covered like just a few sports because it was just my mom and me, very small team, and one of them was cornhole, and particularly unified cornhole, because before the games I interviewed a mother and son from Rhode Island who competed in unified cornhole, and then I ended up just I exchanged a pin with an athlete from Kansas, and then I ended up just he was done competing, and I ended up interviewing him, but particularly the story of this unified cone, and I think I'm gonna upload that either tonight or tomorrow, and so when you hear that, and I might have even should a clip, but yeah, when that episode will be titled Game Day Moments, and so when you hear the one particular soundbite that this unified partner, who also happens to be a mom of an athlete, when the fact that she commented on the all 50 states being under one roof at the opening, in the stadium, that was just a powerful moment that she talked about. And the particular unified cornhole, because it's a new sport, I think it's the first time USA Games. I know in Illinois and probably a lot of state programs, this is the first year that we have cornhole, the first time that we have unified cornhole. One of my coworkers at United Airlines said that next year she wants to be able to compete in unified cornhole with me. So that's and United Airlines is I don't know if they were an official sponsor of the USA Games, even though I think a couple of my coworkers have said that they will, but I know that they're a global. I think that they're a global partner of Special Olympics. So that's another example of here's a global partner that an employee from the global partner is interested in getting involved in unified a unified sport. So I don't know if you want to comment on that, or if you heard any similar stories from any partners or anybody overall that attended a unified competition and now is making a commitment to get involved in unified sports.
Yeah, I don't think I have any stories specifically, but I do know that UHC, they highlighted a unified pair in one of their videos, and it was a beautiful story about a friendship. It's really a story of friendship. And so I think that the unified movement is here to stay, and I'm excited to see where it evolves.
Awesome. Behind the scenes, what's the decision behind the scenes that has shaped the athlete experience? And again, these next few bullets, you don't have to touch on all of them, but actually, I'm gonna skip over that bullet just for the sake of time. But
sure.
We talk about challenges and breakthroughs. That's something that both on this program, both whether it's my story or the other stories that we've been sharing, and even those of us Special Olympics athletes overall, we talk about the challenges that we face, and then we, because of Special Olympics, develop these opportunities. I gave a talk this past spring at a conference titled "From Challenges to Opportunities." So, kind of building upon that theme, what challenges did you and your team in the communications face, and then building upon those challenges, what breakthroughs made these USA Games stronger?
Yeah, so I think the challenge is always in this landscape. It's how do you tell the stories? How do you get the stories out there? And we were really fortunate to have wonderful PR partners and media partners to help us tell those stories, but we really struggled leading up to the games to get those opportunities picked up in larger scale. And I think that the beauty of it is that we kept knocking on the door. And when the door finally opened, it happened to be the week of the games. And so I'll never forget, someone said to me, I can't turn on a TV without seeing Special Olympics USA Games on the news. And I was like, that's what I want to hear, right? And so I think that it was, we had so many people working behind the scenes to build relationships and make those connections. And we didn't necessarily see fruit in the immediacy, but boy, people came out and covered in droves the week of the games. And I think that it was such a beautiful thing. And when people told me that, they're like, I already saw this on channel whatever. And I was like, that's what I want to hear. I want it to be on all of the channels. And so I think those were our comm specific, opportunities that we were able to capitalize on by building relationships. And so it was really extra special to see the fruit during the week of the games, for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, I know. I saw there was a video of one of the other media people. I think he was, in addition to whatever media that he was producing, he was creating like a vlog, I think on Instagram or somewhere. And I think it was his first time being at the USA Games, being at a Special Olympics event as media. So that was powerful. As you personally reflect on your experience as director of communications for these Special Olympics 2026 USA Games, what personal moment will stay with you long after your role as director of communication concludes? I know it might be a difficult question, but now that it's a month after the games, what personal moment will stay with you long after?
I think just the joy of the week, right? As a former athlete myself, athletes go through this. You want to be the best. You want to do your best. You want to win. You're competitive. But I think that the joy that I saw in athletes cheering each other on, other programs cheering for other programs, there's just a camaraderie and a joy surrounding these games that if I could bottle it up and on my very worst day, just take a little of it with me, I think that we're all better for it, right? Like, I think that my perspective has changed on, I'm still competitive. That's never going to leave me. But I think just like the joy and like making lemonade out of lemons, right? Like all of these things, but just the overwhelming amount of joy that the athletes brought to me, to my son. I think that's the legacy for me, is just like, you can be faced with so many challenges, right? Many of our athletes have more challenges than I'll ever face, but the joy that they choose to bring and the light that they choose to bring every single day, if they can do that, so can I. And I can teach my son to do that too. So that's what I think I will always take with me.
Awesome. I love that. And I'm glad that you highlighted the joy of the week, because I think that's the joy is, and I don't have the mission statement of Special Olympics memorized. Maybe I should, but and I probably have it somewhere in some binder on the other side of the studio, the small studio here. But that joy, and when you're talking, like, the reason why for our viewers I held up the water bottle is like as if you were to bottle up that joy and put it in a water bottle. That made me think of something. I don't know if you read Tim Shriver's book "Fully Alive: Discovering What Matters Most," but I actually I've got it in my bedroom next door. But I had interviewed Tim during the 50th anniversary in Chicago, and he didn't believe that I annotated his entire book. But Tim, there's a chapter that he wrote about called "The Fun That Lasts," and I think that message of the fun that lasts relates to you talking about joy, because he said his son Sam, I know his daughter Kathleen was in Minnesota, but I don't think his son Sam was there. But his son Sam compared it to going to and Tim's Tridden has been involved with the movement, but involved with unified sports since for probably their whole lives. But his son Sam compared it to going to Disney World, where when you go to Disney, it's that fun, it's there, and then you come home and then it leaves you. But when you go to a Special Olympics event, just like we were all just up in Minnesota a month ago, and now it's a month later, and just like at the top of the program, like I toppled my microphone over because it's us in the past hour. Over an hour and 16 minutes now of us reflecting on these USA games. It's the fun that lasts, and I think that message that Tim shared, that his son Sam talked about, how it's the fun that lasts, connects with what you talked about wanting to take the joy from Special Olympics, from the USA games, and bottle it up in your Stanley water bottle or whatever.
Right.
And like that big, I don't know how many ounces this is, but that big ounce of I'm trying to 30 ounces of joy that and I think that's, you talked about how to take that bottle of joy and take it with you. I think by people getting involved in the local, now that people are involved, whether it's volunteering or as media or like yourself as director of communications, being involved at the national level can now come back to the local level, whether it's in Minnesota or Illinois or any of the 52 programs across the country, come back to the local program, because that's where that's where a lot of the work of this movement, I think, is from. Is in I was speaking at a panel in Berlin at the World Games on the local program impact, and that's really where I mean, yes, the national games is important, but that's when you talk about how people can take that bottle of joy, is it's coming back to the local level. Two final quick segments as we wrap up and talk about beyond 2026 and the future vision, the next generation. Speaking directly to your young son and other young children, how do you hope that these Special Olympics USA Games will empower the next generation of Special Olympics athletes and unified partners?
Yeah. My hope is that it teaches kindness. I hope that my son, seeing me interact with athletes, that's how he's going to interact with people that are different than him in school or and sports fields or things along those lines. And I think that for the athletes, I think that for them to see that they are not alone and that they have a larger group. It's not just their teammates or their families, that their village extends. And as we teach the younger generation to be kind, to accept people for all of their differences, and to be involved, I think that the village for the Special Olympics athlete grows in tandem. And so that's what I really hope.
Awesome. Absolutely. Talking about evolving this movement, evolving this inclusion movement, what do you see as the next frontier for Special Olympics in the U.S.? Is it more unified champion schools? Is it more unified sports? Is it more athlete leaders get involved in leadership roles? How do you see this movement evolving? What's the next frontier for Special Olympics in the U.S.?
I think it's certainly more unified champion schools. I think that is something that is vitally important. I think it's also, as you bring on more unified champion schools, I think that there needs to be a level of training, and how do we teach our youngest athletes, right? How do we teach them to help and to be kind, and at things that are developmentally appropriate for them? I think that'll be vitally important. But I also think that as we see sports in general being the momentum that sports are having right now, I think it's, how does Special Olympics capitalize on that, right? Mm-hmm. How do we go from we had, I think, 56 corporate partners for the USA Games. How does every program have 56 corporate partners for their everyday programming? Because if we can strengthen programming at the program level, no pun intended, if we can strengthen things there, then I think we raise the bar for everyone, right? And so I think that's where I would like to really see things go. And I think that we have a long way to go in making healthy athletes and the health advocacy for those with intellectual disabilities. I think that has to be front and center of what we're doing, because if our athletes aren't healthy, they can't compete. So let's start with where we can affect change there. I think it's a really powerful thing. And so those are the three things that come to mind immediately.
Awesome. I love that. And I hope, whether it's in my local program in Illinois or Minnesota or any across the 50, if there's any development staff, any of the programs that are listening, that message, I think, is really powerful. And speaking, even because we have a wide, diverse amount of listeners, whether it's other athletes that are listening, or even people like yourself without disabilities. And if there are other people listening, and if you know of a corporate partner that is not yet involved at the local level, hopefully you will take the heart of what Jessica just shared and build upon on how to get more corporate partners. I know in Illinois, we've got the Chicago Ducky Derby, which is one of our big, I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's not a lot of states have this huge duck race into the Chicago River. But, it's maybe you and your son will come down for that. But talk about sustaining inclusion, because I'm going to save this. There's another inclusion question I'm going to save at the very end that we wrap up the episode with. But what must we do as leaders? What must we do as partners? What must we do as communities to sustain the inclusion that we witness at these USA Games, such as in Unified Champion Schools and another? What must we do as leaders, as partners, as communities to sustain the inclusion that you and I and the many, many thousands that were in Minnesota that we so powerfully witnessed at these USA Games?
I think we need to start asking questions and listening. I think for me, anything that we do next has to start with asking questions and listening. I think that, be curious. I think maybe that's what it boils down to. We have to get curious about why we do things the way that we do. Could we change it? Should we change it? What's the catalyst for change? I think that we need to get really curious and figure out how that curiosity can then lead us to the next steps in sustaining this inclusion revolution, because it does no good to come to enjoy the games and have a wonderful experience. But if you're not asking questions when you get home or listening to someone when you get home, you've missed the whole point. And so I think that it's really important for us to, as everyone needs to be curious, ask questions, and listen. Like if we can do those things, I think that we can change a whole lot.
Awesome. I love that. And what you talked about listening and curious, that reminded me of, I know you mentioned RJ O'Leal. I know he has a degree in journalism. I also did, despite my intellectual disability, have a bachelor's degree in journalism. And that's a lesson that I think, whether it's in the communications field or in journalism, that we so powerfully know as journalists to listen and to be curious. And I think that message that you said, that everybody, no matter if you're a journalist, a communicator, a leader, a partner, just a community member, a fan, you can be curious, and that's what will help to grow this inclusion movement and grow the next USA Games, and even grow the local programs to reach 56 corporate partners at each 52 state program in the U.S. As these final moments, I know it's been an hour and 26 minutes, longer than what we originally planned, but this has been such a powerful conversation. And as we close out this series, hopefully, if all of you are all listening, go back to the content, that the episodes we recorded at the games, as well as the pre-games. Larry Goodfellow's mom wrote a book called Special, and she listened to some of the games because I released the content daily when we were in Minnesota. Mm-hmm. And she said a lot of the stories that I was sharing on this podcast series is really evergreen content, where it's not just time stamped to the 2026 USA Games, but you can listen. So hopefully all of you listening or watching can go back on this 12-part series and hear more of these stories. But as we close out this series, and I've got a few in my outro, my closing, I've got a few final messages to my fellow athletes, and as well as families and coaches and supporters and partners and sponsors and donors that I'm going to share at right when we wrap up. But for your clothing, as we close the series, and it's been such the past. We've had 2 months, June and July, of content on this podcast series. I hope our listeners are not tired, but that's just how powerful. Like the name Special Chronicles is inspired from Special Olympics. Tim Shriver even commented that quite a few years ago. But what's a message that you have? What's a final message that you would like to share to the 3,000 Special Olympics athletes and unified partners who competed at these 2026 USA Games? What's the final message that you have to all the athletes who have competed?
That's a good one. My message would be, you all are inspiration. You all do things the right way. You all are the role models that I want my 5.5-year-old to be looking up to. So keep going. Keep being who you are. Keep smashing records. Get in medals. But never lose your heart. Keep your heart, because your heart and the joy that you bring to your events and to the people and the communities that you're in, that lasts a long, long time. So keep being yourselves.
Awesome. I love that. That might have to be a clip that we show. There might be another clip, but there might be a clip that we might have to show. Awesome. I love that. Speak to the families because families like you witnessed. My mom was she's a retired foreign language teacher, so she doesn't have experience in media, but she was like my camera person, assisting me during the week, even though she had to carry a stool with her and take some breaks. But families, my dad helps on the business side of Special Chronicles. My girlfriend, who is also an athlete, and so families are the heart behind all of us athletes. So what would you say to families? What would you say to coaches and supporters who made this journey possible? What's the message to families, coaches, and supporters?
I would just say thank you for sharing. Thank you for helping these athletes grow into the wonderful human beings that they are and they will be. Thank you for just your hearts for service, but your heart for just like helping them be the people that they're supposed to be. I think that's so important. And I know every day is not easy, but just thank you for supporting them so that we can then experience their gifts in this world.
Awesome. I love that. Before we get to the final question, because the final question has to do with inclusion, and that's really the call to action. But before we get to that, and taking that final question, I'm going to edit a montage because I asked this final question to many people at the games, as well as the pre-episodes as well. But before, and I'm teasing that and I'm sure on podcasts we tease to kind of keep people listening all the way to the very end. But before we get to that, what's one action that you hope our listeners to this program, what's one action that you hope our listeners will take after hearing this final episode? What do you hope that our listeners will take with them after hearing this final episode, this 12-part series?
I would say get involved. Find your local program, find a way to volunteer, find a way to coach. If all you can do is donate, do something, because this movement is really important. It's important to humanity. It's not just sports. It's not just sports that we're changing humanity through sports. And that's a movement that anyone can get behind. Awesome.
I love that. That's another great clip moment that you said about changing humanity through sport. Powerful. It goes similar to. There was a quote from a unified coach, and then one of my local staff had both answered a similar question about how inclusion. I've got it, I think, saved. Ooh, I almost skipped over my last question here, but they answered this question, and I had dinner with my content producer in DC last weekend, and I've got to find a way to turn this into a t-shirt. But they said inclusion doesn't see disability. Inclusion doesn't see disability, and so I've got to find a way to turn that into we've got a merch shop at Special Chronicles. So but like that's just a part of a quote. But that quote kind of ties into what you said about that final message that you hope our listeners will take about changing humanity through sport. I think that kind of ties in with that. This final question, we've got a bumpo to kind of introduce this final question. So I'm going to go ahead and roll this bumpo as we wrap up with this final call to action, because we want our listeners to listen to the past hour and a half, but even more than that, we want to leave our listeners with a call to action to bring the inclusion revolution into their towns, into their schools, into their workplaces, into their sports fields. And this final question will help our listeners to do just that. So let's go ahead and roll that bumpo.
We're not just athletes.
We are the ambassadors of an uprising.
Peaceful protesters.
In a rebellion against anyone
who has a fear of difference.
Difference.
Our demands are
Equality.
Dignity.
And the recognition of our
Shared humanity. We will not stop.
or accept anything less.
Today, our world is
More divided than ever.
And coming together has never been more urgent.
The revolution.
Is inclusion.
Find out more at jointherevolution.org.
So, ever since I attended the 2019 Special Olympics World Games in Abu Dhabi back in 2019, I've been asking this final question, and it's so powerful. That quote that I shared in asking this question for 7 years, I never got the two people answer the same way, and so we've talked a lot about kind of inclusion in the legacy, but what does inclusion mean to you?
For me, inclusion means making space for everyone, no matter how they look, no matter what their differences are. It's making space for everyone's voice to be heard. That's what inclusion means to me.
Awesome. I love that. That's a powerful way to wrap up. Thank you again, Jessica. Our guest has been Jessica Poole, Director of Communications for the Special Olympics 2026 USA Games. And thank you again, Jessica, for staying with us and having this meaningful conversation for the past hour and a half. Thank you and it was a joy to get a chance to chat with you. Even though my mom was tired when in doing the games, but thank you again for and that the content that I recorded some commentary when we were up in the media room, and my mom and I had to find a little closet in the back of the media room just to be able to recode some commentary. But I think that episode was so far has been one of our most popular episodes this month coming from the games. But thank you again, Jessica, for all that you have done for all of us Special Olympics athletes and for taking the time to talk with us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And let's keep the movement going.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's keep moving, and I'm sure we'll be able to stay in touch as well.
Yes.
So thank you all again for joining us for this powerful finale of Road to Special Olympics 2026 USA Games. And thank you again to Jessica Poole, Director of Communications, for sharing her reflections, for sharing her leadership and her vision for the legacy of these Special Olympics USA Games. Please go and listen to the previous episodes of the series and like and share it with your friends. Text it to a friend, share it on your social media. And as we close out this series, I want to speak directly to my fellow Special Olympics athletes of the 2026 Special Olympics USA Games. You showed the world what determination, joy, and leadership look like. Your performances, your voices, and your stories shape the culture of these USA Games. You are the legacy. To the families, coaches, and supporters, your love, your encouragement, and your belief in inclusion made this journey possible. You built the foundation that athletes like myself stand on. And to our partners, sponsors, and donors, your commitment didn't just support an event, it strengthened a movement. The legacy of these USA Games continues because of you. And to everyone listening, inclusion is not a moment. It's a movement. It's a movement. It's the choice that we make every day to see, to heal, and to celebrate the abilities of all people. The 2026 Special Olympics USA Games showed us what's possible. Now it's up to all of us to carry it forward. So here's my call to action. Take one step, big or small, to advance inclusion in your community. Volunteer, hire, support, listen, and share, and choose to include. I'm Daniel Smrokowski, host and founder of Special Chronicles. Thank you for being part of this journey, for celebrating the athletes, and for helping us tell the story of the Special Olympics 2026 USA Games. The games may be over, but the legacy continues. And together, we'll keep the movement alive. To tune in to more weekly episodes on the Special Chronicles podcast, visit specialchronicles.com/pod or search Special Chronicles wherever you get podcasts. And until the next episode, remember, choose to include. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Special Chronicles podcast. Our podcast was produced by Daniel Smrokowski on the Special Chronicles Network. Follow Special Chronicles on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. Subscribe, rate, and review Special Chronicles on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Our website, specialchronicles.com, where you can stream our archives of over 500 episodes absolutely for free. Also, there's a list of our favorites, original series, award-winning columns, and blogs. And sign up for our newsletter to receive exclusive bonus content delivered to your inbox. Again, specialchronicles.com. Special Chronicles is hosted by Podbean Podcast Hosting. Our live streams are powered by StreamYard. Thanks, as always, to our business manager, Adam Smrokowski, who always encourages us to never give up. I'm Daniel Smrokowski, back next week with more stories.
Special Chronicles, giving respect and a voice to people with special needs.